By now, I am sure you have seen some of the headlines. Twitter, Tesla, Meta, and even some mortgage companies are starting to lay people off from their jobs. Guys, listen, this is nothing new. When it comes to it's time for it being a recession, people will let you go. There are always signs that you should look out for, though. As somebody who has been through a couple of different layoffs, most recently in 2019, I can tell you some of the things that you need to be looking out for before you get the axe. You guys, layoffs are never a surprise to the company. Like, they don't just come in at 8 o'clock in the morning and say, okay, at 10 o'clock, let's let everybody go. What tends to happen is these are things that are done months in advance. And so because the company is starting to shift and make changes, they're going to noticeably have shifts in the way that the culture is operating throughout those, 2-3 months where they're getting prepared to lay you off. When you have mass layoffs, the companies have to let the state know that these layoffs are coming. This information is usually publicly reported, so that's why you get the headlines that say, oh, company XYZ laid off 1,200 people today. What's so important about this information is that I'm sure you didn't know that millennials are making up the most of the workforce at this time. And because millennials make up most of the workforce, you're most likely to be the ones to get the axe. So here's some signs that they're going to tell you to get your and get out. Back 6 months ago, your company was probably hiring a lot of people and suddenly they stopped. Generally, this is called a hiring freeze. They've stopped letting people come in because they are no longer in a state of expansion. They're starting to realize that they need to contract, pull back on the budget a little bit. So if you've noticed that some positions have gone unfilled for the last, 2, 3 months, 4 months, that is a huge sign that things are not going so well, and they're going to start to look internally as to how they might be able to cut back, and your position might be one of those things. One big question that I would suggest that you ask yourself is your job critical? Meaning, are you making the company money or are you costing the company money? Is your job role important enough to where they really can't get along without you? That is a huge sign that if they do start doing layoffs, you might be one of the first that has to go. Layoffs generally come in waves. So if they've already started that ball rolling and you've heard of other departments where they might have let a few people go, signs are that that's not going to be the only cut. Companies tend to have 2, 3, or more waves of layoffs. So once that first round happens, you might want to start dusting off your resume and looking at job boards, because again, you do not want to be in a scenario where they say, it's been real, thanks, you gotta go. Another sign is that you've noticed that suddenly you can take longer lunch breaks. Suddenly, nobody's really checking for you to see if you're getting there on time. Suddenly, those emails are trickling in where before you had hundreds and hundreds of emails to respond to every single day. Guys, that is a sign. Work is starting to slow down. They are starting to shut you down and ease you out of your position. So they won't have a whole lot of loose ends to tie up when your time comes. Another sign is you've not been invited to meetings. Sometimes they'll have meetings and you find out, oh, I didn't know the team was meeting today. They didn't tell you because you won't be there much longer. When it comes to the budget, I worked somewhere one time where we had to bring our own coffee machines. Like, coffee was like a really, really big deal. Like, they didn't want to pay for it. So if your company is offering things like as small as coffee and they start to pull back on the budget and not allow you to have coffee, I know it sounds silly, but not having coffee anymore, that is a huge sign that they are starting to cut things from the budget before they get to people. People are a huge part of the budget. And so when you start to see those little things like that, and you start noticing little things like that, or they might be using 2 sides of printer paper like they did when I was teaching, it is time to start dusting off that resume and maybe looking for another job. So sometimes when you're about to have to leave your job, you and your manager might have little meetings here and there. Well, they'll ask you, hey, do you mind, sharing a little bit more information about what you do during the day? Like, exactly how do you do your job? Can you make a list of accounts that you've been working on? Can you add some contact information so, we all on the same page and we know what's going on? That's not so we know what's going on. That's so they know what's going on. So again, another big sign that your position might be getting eliminated sooner rather than later. So this next thing is last hired, first fired. That is a real thing. Generally speaking, people are going from job A to job B for a raise. If you just started your job in the last year and you got way more money than you expected to get, that is a sign that they may be coming for you first. Now, if you're on the other side of that and you've been with your company for quite some time and you are of a retirement age, they may start to offer you early retirement. So if you're not at that age, but your best girl that you call auntie at your job is starting to get her paperwork in order so she can submit for retirement, please know that that may not be a decision that he or she made on their own. It is a decision that the company probably came to them with and said, hey, listen, we appreciate your time. Here is a $50 gift card. Don't worry about coming back anymore. The check's in the mail. Sometimes you might notice some leadership changes, not necessarily with your team lead or your manager, but maybe your manager's manager. A lot of times they start cutting at the top when they want to start going in a different direction because the profit margins are a lot less and they feel that they need a boost and new ideas to get the company going in the right direction again. So pay attention to those C-level executives. Pay attention to people that may be 2 tiers higher than you to see if they're being asked to leave because they're bringing in new sheriff in town. So this thing is a little bit opposite of what I talked about a little bit earlier. Sometimes you might notice that they've started adding things to your plate or adding things to your coworkers' plate. So instead of taking away job responsibilities, they're starting to consolidate jobs without increasing salaries. When they start consolidating jobs and adding new tasks to people, those people might be the ones that get to stay, whereas, the ones that they're taking certain responsibilities away from are probably on their way to being pushed out and being laid off. Do you make more money than the average person does at your job doing your job? Those expenses matter. If you are balling out of control because your salary is so big, you might need to start dusting off your resume and looking at job boards. So far, do you find these tips and tricks to be a little bit helpful? If so, give me a thumbs up and let me know. Give me some comments. Let me know if I might be missing something. Tell us about your experience of when you knew the jig was up at your job and it was time to go. Another big thing is mergers and acquisitions. Is your company merging with another company? Like, are they being bought out by another company maybe to help keep them afloat? I'm noticing that a lot in the mortgage industry. That is a huge sign that things are not going well if another company is coming in, putting on a cape to save the day. So you all might potentially be able to keep your jobs. One thing that you have to consider with mergers and acquisitions is that they're not going to replicate 2 and 3 of the same person. So if they start to have mergers or some sort of acquisitions to where your company is being absorbed by another company, you might need to dust off your resume and get on them job boards. Another really obvious one is they flat out tell you, listen, y'all, we're doing a hiring freeze. We're not hiring right now. So they are overtly explaining to you what the scenarios are, the situations are with the company and the company's budget. That is the time to start dusting off your resume and checking job boards. I don't know how many ways to say this. It can be that blatant. Your manager might have a good relationship with you, and they always know information that they don't share with you. If you have a good relationship and they want to give you some information and some good intel, it is best to take that information that they are providing you very seriously, because again, it could be an opportunity for you to get ahead of the curve and find somewhere else to go. Last but not least, this is a really big one. Whenever you're selecting an employer, you always want to know a little bit of information about that company. Does your company have a history of doing job layoffs? If they do, the chances are that is just the way that they operate. Banks tend to lay people off a lot, all the time. I remember in the 90s hearing lots of people losing their jobs when First Union turned into Wachovia and Wachovia turned into Wells Fargo. It happens a lot depending upon what industry you're in. If you're in an industry where layoffs are common, dig a little bit deeper. Figure out, what did your company do the last time we had conditions like this when there was a recession? 2008, 2009 is a little bit more of an anomaly because that was a great recession. However, you still want to know what your company's philosophies are in terms of how they handle when the going gets tough. Well, that's about it. I've given some tips about what I think is something that you should be able to look for when these layoffs are on the way. You guys, I have been through this a couple of different times, and I found this information to be pretty insightful. You don't want to be in a situation where all of a sudden you're just being hit upside the head and you don't have a job by noon. So if you found this information to be helpful and you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Guys, comment down below and let me know, what are your layoff stories? Because honestly, if you have a job for 10, 20, 30 years, it's bound to happen to you. Maybe you had a friend that it happened to. Share your story so people don't feel like they're alone, because a lot of times when we go through layoffs, people really do feel very, very alone. I actually have a video that will be coming out that's going to talk about, once you're laid off, what should you do next? Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you later. Bye.